we're ready now to focus in on this important topic that all of us should be concerned about and we all need to know more about. I would like to present to you our moderator, who is James Taylor, who is a Student and Social Services Director at MSD Warren Township. Also on the panel, we have scheduled, I'm not sure who else in the room, Anthony Beverly, who is the co-director of Stop the Violence Indianapolis, the Honorable Tara Melton with the Marion County Superior Court Juvenile Division, King Akpan, who is a senior at Purdue Polytech High School. He's a peer mentor for the Positive School Discipline Institute. This is his second year with the program, and he also works with other programs in the city. Dr. Carolyn Janetti is scheduled to be with us. She's a professor and inaugural dean at Butler University. That's a new title, and we're interested to hear how that's happening. And Stacia Gray, who is with the Indiana Council on Educating Students of Color. Will the panelists please come forward? And you'll be introducing yourselves again. We are very delighted to have such a quality panel with us today.
Once again, I'm James Taylor, Director for Student Services for the Metropolitan School District of Warren Township. Thank you all for having us here today. Thank you to the vendors. Thank you to CPLI. Thank you to the church for having us here. It is a beautiful day outside. Let's have some great conversation. We'll start this conversation off. First thing I want to say is, mercy, mercy me. Things ain't what they used to be, okay? So that's the context of this conversation. So why don't we do this before we get deep into the conversation? I want to reintroduce you all again and say a little bit more about yourself. Let's start right here.
Good afternoon. I am Stacia Gray. I sit here today representing the Indiana Council on Educating Students of Color. Have worked in Perry Township as a homeschool advisor. Sat on various boards, the Masonic 32nd Degree Learning Center, Dyslexia, Ivy Endowment, and have also worked in broadcasting. So I have a varying background. But what has brought it home for me is the Indiana Council on Educating Students of Color. We have a tutoring program, as well as a pilot program that I will be excited to tell you about later.
Awesome.
And glad to be here.
Thank you.
My name's King. I'm involved with dozens of organizations around the city, mostly focused on youth violence prevention and youth voice advocacy. So teaching youth they have a voice, and then how to use their voice effectively to advocate for change, systemic and community level change. I do that with the help of my mentors, like Brandon Ramble and Kareem. And yeah, I do it for the youth, made by the youth for the youth.
Awesome, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Carolyn Gentle-Kennedy. I'm now at Butler University, founding dean. It's a pleasure to be with you at Butler. We're making college affordable. So we have a brand new program that hopefully many of you will learn a little bit more about through the Founders College. But I come from about 20 years at Indiana University, and I'm in this capacity as also an expert in absenteeism. I'm known worldwide for absenteeism and attendance, as well as locally for moving processes through that with pivot attendance solutions and working particularly with Director Taylor.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tara Melton. I'm a magistrate in the Marion Superior Court. I'm actually in Court 24 here in Indianapolis, of course. And what we do in the family court is the division was created in 2021. We started, but we consolidated all cases that involve children and families. So like every judge, the families are now supposed to be with one court. So if you have a chin case, a JD case, or divorce, or custody, that one court will hear all of the cases. So I deal with and see a lot of the consequences of absenteeism and other barriers to school. And so this is an opportunity for me to share and learn actually as well, because we're supposed to work together, right? And,
Yeah.
And create partnerships. And it's good for me to know what the resources are for the family. So when I do make decisions, I can refer and say, hey, what about this? How can we help this family?
Thank
I'm
you.
excited about being here.
Pleasure to meet you. Let me set the stage for you. Family of 9, put out of their home. The landlord put them out. Mother has a master's degree in business. Dad works every day at a restaurant. The place that they were staying charged them $2,500 for rent a month. Family has nowhere to go. Family went to Firefly. They said their family was too large. Family went to the trustee office. The trustee office couldn't help. The kids are struggling with attendance. What do you do? Let me give you another example. Classroom assistant. They only get paid 21 times a year instead of 26 times a year. They have children too. What should she do? Her car gave out. She called the school for help, asking for financial assistance. Her rent is behind. She finances her car through a buy here, pay lot. What do you do? Every Tuesday and Thursday in Warren Township, over 300 families go through eviction court. For every one parent that comes to court, 4 to 5 kids are affected. What do we do? So the issue of chronic absenteeism is not just an issue of criminal justice. It's not just an issue of, oh, by the way, kids are being referred to the prosecutor's office based on the new law. It's more than that. It has to do with citizenship, families learning how to live and survive in a time that's tough. It has to do with finances and socioeconomic status, in addition to kids being placed in the system. So I'm going to start with my first question for the panel. I want you to elaborate on some of those things that you've dealt with concerning chronic absenteeism, or what you thought you knew about chronic absenteeism. What are the current problems and the root causes associated with absenteeism that have made this topic become so alarming, both locally and across the nation? And I'll throw that out there for anyone to answer right now. Don't all jump out there at the same time.
You ready? Context is relevant. So the stories help us frame the humanness of this challenge. It's bigger now because we had more people spotlighting it. COVID gave a platform for us to see it, to experience it. So responding to the problem has a lot to do, which many of you know I always go to, defining what we're tracking. Absenteeism is a word or a phrase we use often, but we don't know what we're talking about when we talk about absenteeism. Most times the conversations and the punishment are based on attendance. Attendance is purely tracking present and absent. There are only 2 codes within school. That's attendance. Absenteeism is everything around that absent. Whether it's finance, whether it's illness, whether it's debt or car or, the legal system, the juvenile justice, everything around it. So when we talk about responding to the problem, we have to ask ourselves, have we been collecting information in order for us to take action appropriately. So from my vantage point, from local in Indiana, national across the US, international across 20 different countries where I do work, we know that I'll give you the two top problems that we have that are root causes of absenteeism has to do with understanding and punishment. Those are the two, and that's where change can occur. Because we punish without knowing, we punish the child for parents being evicted, we punish parents who are working really hard to help their students get to school. But we don't understand. We think we understand because we have one or two factors, but don't fully understand the whole child. And I'll share the floor.
Thank you.
I agree with everything said thus far. That top-down approach, we talked about it last week during a presentation I was a part of, that I got to be a part of. A top-down approach is always a negative thing, especially when it comes to positions of power, when you have influence over a certain subject or area, especially if it's within the community or it's directly affecting people. That top-down approach, the most recent example I can think of, especially with the school system, is the ban on phones. They're looking at it as how many of our kids are not engaged, how many of them are on their phones during class. It's a black or white. There's no room for that gray area with that top-down approach, and that ends up having you not see the full picture before you make a decision. So that uninformed decision, I think, is a big step in solving the problem. As well, as a person who's experienced like domestic violence in the home, it's really hard to bring yourself to school, especially when you're at those younger ages. There's been times when my mom wasn't taking me to school, I had to get there, and the mental state of a child, especially in those younger ages, like elementary, middle school, I think isn't taken into account at all. I don't feel like I had a teacher I was really close with, and she really saved my life. I couldn't overstate that enough. Had Miss Janet not have been there, had she not have been that rock, that mother figure and father figure, all in one for me, we can't expect all of our teachers to do that for our kids. So I think the fact that there are no mental health resources there that helped me or that will help the kids of these future generations is crucial. I didn't want to go to school other than the fact that it was better than home. If it wasn't, why would I have gone? It's just when your mental state is so damaged, school becomes not a priority. It becomes like a mandatory thing you have to do or else you'll be punished. Or, mom says it all the time, go to school or I'll go to jail. It's not about, I want to pursue education because education matters. And, a lot of times people of my color weren't afforded that education, right? And it's super important. So I feel like checking on the mental state of these kids and actually helping them out.
Awesome, King. Thank you so much. Good job.
High five.
Good job.
We see you.
So, one of you all want to elaborate?
Well, you know what? I think that both of you hit the nail on the head as far as what I can see. You have to ask why. The reasons are different and they vary. They vary from school district. They vary from student to student, different households. You may have some kids where, I was just talking to a friend this morning, there is suburban kids with a little more means. They don't go to school because it's an option, right? Since COVID, since the pandemic, they've learned, I don't have to be there, I can just catch up online. I don't even have to go. I have all my social on my phone. What do I need to go? I don't need to develop relationships. I don't need a teacher. I can just read the book and do it on my own. So you have that particular part of it, and then you have the other things that are more traumatic in the sense that we do have students who are in the foster care system. Their parents don't value the education. They really didn't have a good education, so they don't think it's important for their child. We see that a lot, and those are also factors in how we decide custody, right? If there's a parent that does not think it's important to get the child to school or make sure they have a good education, that way we do consider that. But I do think asking why is huge. Why are they not here? Is it something that we can help? And I've always said, the one thing I learned after being in this profession almost 30 years is that the household unit determines so much. Right. If the household unit is not healthy, then what you're going, when you go to school, it either will be a safe haven, which I relate with you, it was a safe haven for me, or it will be a place that perpetuates more of the same. And if you have children who don't feel welcome, don't feel like they belong in the school system, they're constantly being told that. I think about when I went to Catholic school, we didn't get to go home if we got in trouble. The suspension was not, we didn't pick up trash. The last thing we got to do was go home.
That would have been like a treat, right? I get to go back home and watch TV and play games or whatever. But no, I do think understanding the why. Why are the children not there? And then figuring out what you can help with. And again, I do think social workers, we need to have almost as many as we do teachers in the schools to help the children. I just honestly believe that that's the missing piece, I think, in a lot of what's going on.
Thank you.
I agree to what has been said. I find it very interesting that absenteeism and punishment are used in the same context. Mm-hmm. Because in speaking to the trauma coordinator at Eskenazi Hospital, she was saying that absenteeism for them is a sign that something is going on. Mm-hmm. So something not okay is going on. So I don't get the absenteeism and punishment part of it. There was a time years ago when students were choosing not to go to school to have fun, to go fishing, or what have you. But because of how things are currently, absenteeism is a symptom and should not be looked at, I feel.
And I think if I may steal the floor just for a quick second, amplifying all of what had been said, that's exactly it. But schools are very much about code, dollars, support, right? So support sort of comes last in that structure. And so when you talk about chronic absenteeism is for in-school suspension as well as out-of-school suspension. It's all absences. So when we hear amplified on the news that chronic absenteeism is high, it is high, and it should be high. We just came over COVID, right? And last year alone, we were at about 20.3%, or a little bit, I may be a little bit off, but we were in the 20% in chronic absenteeism. This year, we're 19.3. So there's been a decrease, but that's because we're looking at excused absence, so those authorized absence, and unexcused absences. When we're talking about absenteeism, remember, it's the absence itself. So it may be a person missing for the latest movie or the latest show or something that's coming up, but also that person that's experiencing the trauma, or like you, something going on. So all of that. And we see the support just being for those that were not sanctioned to be away. And that's where I think there is a huge gap, because the support should be for all students who are absent for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Allow me to interpret what she just said. Let me give you an example. This is about equity.
Yes.
The compulsory attendance law was developed to punish, and we've operated from that law since the creation of it.
Correct.
So if it's an equity issue, and chronic absenteeism is the tool or the measure that we want to go by, not unexcused absences. There's a difference between an unexcused absence and chronic absenteeism. Unexcused is when somebody doesn't call their child in or write a letter. Now, check out the equity game we're playing. Dr. Janetti has a high IQ, a high level of function. So Dr. Janetti just thinks that she can take her kids to Belize anytime she chooses, and it's considered a field trip. So Dr. G takes her kids to Belize for 10 days during the school year, and she calls it in, and the principal says, "That's a great learning experience, Dr. G. We'll be here when you get back." It's a great learning experience. However, on the other hand, Someone else who doesn't have the executive functioning skills, who won't call in because she's busy as heck or he's busy as heck, lives at Super 8, got 2 beds in the room, okay, with 6 kids, and they never call in. Guess who we're going to go after?
Yeah.
Now, is that fair?
No.
So what Dr. G is saying, an absence is an absence. If you're not there, it's not to say that you can't learn, but we prefer if you're here. If it's a learning situation where you need to do some learning away from the school, we develop that within our own school systems. But a lot of parents do it all the time, and they just don't send their kids to school. So in Warren Township, we've leveled the playing field, and we told all of our parents, you must meet a 97% standard. We need you here 97% of the time. You're going to get a phone call even when you think you shouldn't get a phone call, just as a reminder.
Is that determined district by district?
That's determined locally.
Okay. So when I looked at that law, I say you have to have excuse for everyone who's parent. And the school supposed to recommend those absences. And I saw the 10 days you have vacation, and I immediately saw discrepancy in my travel from school to school and my job. That, wow, this is so unfair. It was okay.
Yeah.
I can't get a ride. I don't have a sitter. That's not okay, but nobody can ask.
Right. Well, the new law is asking for you to do prevention. They're asking you to know your kids on the front end. And to be honest with you, it's not a hard thing to do. You all, CPLI, you practice trauma-informed care, PSDI. You teach it. Like the lady said here, ask why. Are you okay? If you missed the day, you shouldn't just come back. Ask, are you okay? How can I help you? And help that kid reacclimate to what's going on in school. A lot of times the kid will come back and nobody will say a word to him. But the way that the law is written now, it operates on 3 levels. And they want schools to do more on the prevention side. So we're asking you to know your kids up front before it gets to tier 2 and to tier 3. We don't want to operate as a lag measure. We want to know who these kids are up front, like Dr. Janetti said, to give them support on the front end. That's why they're asking you to identify your kids.
Director Taylor, I think, if I may, one more about the discrepancy in the law itself is that we have to understand schools are locally controlled, and that's nationwide. There's also a model attendee that indicates how much of, or what percent we would want students to show up. So the 97% for Warren is much higher than many other school districts, but that's set by the schools. The concern, however, is when do we intervene? And what we see is, particularly private, well-resourced school, as soon as there's one absence, there's a letter that's sent home, there's some structures that are in place. When that student comes back, there's a what happened, they're meeting, they're getting back on track. What we see in our local public school systems where they're not as well resourced, we see it's after 40 absences, 30 absences, and this is chronic absence, so both excused and unexcused. So what we have then is a discrepancy in when we intervene. It may be that they have limited resources, that if they intervene, they don't have anything to offer, or limited resources to offer, but it's understanding that pattern.
Which takes me to my next question for the panel. What opportunities are you aware of that are provided by schools, community agencies, organizations to support youth and families to help solve issues related to absenteeism? Now, remember, I talked about family problems, all of these transportation problems. What do you think that we can do to get better in those areas?
Speaking off personal experience as well as the experience of people closest to me, I feel like transportation with most schools, they're doing a lot better on that. I feel like they're doing a lot better on having the buses go around the actual community where the school is and picking up the majority of the kids that actually go to that school. For me, in my experience, I think the biggest thing that we're lacking on is that mental health aspect of it, not just for the kids, but the family. I mean, there's been times where I've had people close to me or my own mom reach out and say, like, I need help. Like, I need a recommendation to a therapist. Like, my kids need certain supplies. My My brother, he struggles with mental health a lot, aggression, anger issues. And when he was having trouble in school, my mom went to the school and said, he's struggling. I don't know what to do. I'm not equipped to handle his issues. Help me. And then at every school, KIP, every school he went to, it just suspended him, or they was like, we're going to expel you, you have to move schools. So I feel like even when the schools are aware of the issues, it's not changing, and they're not equipped with the resources to deal with the issues they have. And a fact from from Brandon Randall, he pulled this up for us in one of our True Dialogue sessions. There are schools, like for example Carmel High School. It has around like 13% of IPS's total operating budget for all 50 plus schools. It has middle and high school. So it's having that one school has more funding than like 5-10 schools in an IPS district. So when you see videos online of Carmel High School and they have 3 gymnasiums, 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools, and then like you go back to our schools in the community here and you go, we can't even afford 3 therapists. What are like, our robotics team is the only thing we have. We can't get jerseys for our basketball team. So I think funding is the root cause of that problem, because I know that they care, especially within the community. The schools do care, but a lot of the times they can't handle it. They're understaffed and underfunded. Even when the kids are cared about by all the teachers at an emotional level, it becomes hard because you can't give every wrestler a ride to the match. You can't get every basketball player. You can't pay for every single jersey. You can't give them all rides. There's only so much that these teachers can do by themselves. So I think the funding is a really big issue.
Powerful.
Good job. Good job. But let me say this to you. You make sure you tell Brandon not to quote financial things, okay? Because Brandon doesn't understand that the operation cost for Carmel is higher because they've transferred that money from inner city schools. But IPS got a lot of money, dude. IPS has a lot of money, okay? I'll get Brandon for you. I'll get it for you. All right, go ahead. Who else wants to take a shot at that question?
You ready?
Well, other opportunities. I do want to say this as a parent. I think that the disconnect started. We all use the pandemic as a where we see that there was a huge disconnect and with families and children. But for me, it happened after the first major school shooting. School shooting, mass shooting in the school. And my children were in elementary, middle, and just elementary and middle school. And one of the things that I saw that changed immediately was my access to my child, the teacher, the administrators. I felt shut out. I felt like I used to go to lunch with my son and my daughters, and that turned into, well, you have to schedule. Well, I don't have a schedule where I can just say, okay, I can go to lunch. But when I do get an opportunity and I get to go to lunch and say, how's your day? How are you doing? Those are the type things that help the teachers, right? Because we're able to be there. We're able to be there. We're able to be involved. Now I've noticed it is different. You don't have that same reach, that same camaraderie, that same team feeling. And I think when that happens, the children feel it also. So I do think at some point we need to figure out how to engage family and parents again, to where they feel like they're a part of the education that their child is receiving. And that's just me from a person who has an education, right? So I look at the parents that come before me who have children in the foster care system, who are struggling financially, who have jobs where they are on a point system. And it doesn't matter why they miss work, it's a point. And if they get so many points, they lose their jobs. So they can't necessarily come to the school or take off work, but they do still want to. We have to find ways to communicate with them and engage them so that they can keep the job, but also be engaged in their child's life. And that's going to be creative, right? That's going to be creative. So I do think that's important. But in my world, I get to say, hold people accountable. Like DCS, did you put that referral in for counseling for this child? Does this child have a educational liaison? Sounds like I hear this child may need an educational liaison in addition to a guardian ad litem, in addition to parents and foster parents. What are the supports? So I'm always looking for supports, which we do have. So it's kind of, I can cheat a little bit because I have a whole system where I can pick and make sure. But it is important that I know my job so I know how to hold them accountable. And I have to care enough about the children and the family to hold them accountable. So it's not just a job for me, if that makes any sense. So it's important that we have that going on. But I see your hands, so I'm going to stop. Go ahead.
And all of you, I'm from Bryan Hudson, Indiana, and just to hear your responses to that. I'm Director of Student and Family Services, so this year that's what my focus is: family and children, getting those families together, and making sure that those meetings are the times that parents are available.
Yeah.
Doing assessments to see what it is that parents want.
Mhm.
For so long, we just assume that we know because we're educators,
Mhm.
or we know just because we know.
Mhm.
And not taking that information from parents. Parents are wealth of information. They just don't have the opportunity to do it. So we got to do better at that, especially for the public.
Yeah.
Through the system, there are, where I live, you can throw a rock and not hit any teacher.
Yeah.
And so just to hear you guys talk about that, because that's what my focus is this year. I met with the assistant superintendent and I say something have to be done, and then holding those parents accountable.
Right.
Not tell parents like, I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. I was just telling Miss Dr. Gwen here, I'm the social worker and the educator. And so I go in between those. So I just thank you guys for your comments. We just need to have more of these things going around so parents can be here.
Yes.
And making those times available for them and having someone to take care of their little people.
Yes.
So we can do this kind of stuff. And because we're not going to survive as people of color, I don't believe, until we do something different. Too many of our children are not reading. And I tell everybody, that's an easy thing to do. It is easy to teach kids how to read. I did it for over 12, 13 years. And we were Ball State University, only 8 performing school. We were the 8 performing school in the state of Indiana. And we decided it was too hard. The expectations were too high. And wouldn't bring our children.
Oh.
Now help me understand that.
So, those are the challenges we have.
Awesome.
I'm going to hold the mic.
She wouldn't let me have the mic. Well, I want to circle back as a principal. After those school shootings, our fear alert just shot sky high. And doubling that with being in a high crime area, it just tripled the stress. And finally, we gradually released that stress where we knew families more. We asked them what they needed. And as Dr. Kelly, once supervisor, we created an invitational environment for them. And one more thing, we were at a school ice cream social. She'll fight me for this, Mike. School ice cream social, and one of the parents said, "I couldn't get my child here because I work a split shift. I earn more money if I do that. I have to be there at 6 a.m. Why can't you have earlier services? Why can't you have before and after school that's later?" So somehow we have to meet their needs. We can't keep taking and punishing over and over again and expect things to change.
Right. So here's what we have here. When you operate from an evidence-based model, if you get off track, you can always go back. With attendance, we've always operated from behind. We've waited for kids to get to 30 absences, and all of a sudden now we're looking for that kid. It's too late. That kid is gone, off the grid. So what the Department of Education and our legislators did, they had good intentions, but they also caused a little bit of confusion because we know that our prosecutor's office has not filed a failure to insure in over 10 years. Failure to insures are for kids pre-K through the 5th grade. That means that It's the parents' responsibility to get them to school. Now, we're not asking for them to press charges against the family. All we've asked for years is help. We've been asking the wrong people for help. What I tell all of the other school systems is that you're responsible for your own kids and you're responsible for your own parents. Stop looking to the court to do what you should be doing. They didn't want to hear that. They're still looking for the prosecutor's office to help them out. Here's what the prosecutor's office is going to do. When we meet with our kids at 5, by law, the new statute, we'll have a conference with them. We'll say, hey, hope you can do better. We're going to assist you. We have these resources for you. Then the family gets to 10. A letter goes to the prosecutor's office saying that this kid has 10 absences by law. The prosecutor's office will send out a nasty letter that says you are subject to a fine of $10,000, arrest, jail, you'll be referred to DCS. There's nothing nice about a letter at 10 unexcused absences. There's 180 days in the school year, and 10 absences equivalent to what, Dr. G? 96% attendance. That's not bad.
Nope.
So why am I getting a letter at 10? Why am I being threatened at 10 when I can turn around this behavior with support? So what I say to Judge Graves, and he and I coined the term, don't report, support. Don't report, support. We have our kids from K through 12. If I refer them to DCS, and if I refer them to the judges, what can they do that I can't do in 12 years with my kids? So
I know
No.
we're out of time, so we want to sprint through and make sure everybody can respond, as well as you had to share about your pilot program. I want to be clear with those who will be doing programming. We have not had a consistent way of tracking. So yes, there's present and absent codes. We are asking very, very strongly, finding ways to categorize. So there's school avoidance. That's a child missing school for something that's going on in the school climate. Start calculating those types of absences and providing the right services. School withdrawal is the other term. That's parentally condoned. So parents are choosing for some reason to keep their child out. Those resources are different from school avoidance. School refusal has to do with psychological trauma and all the other situations that are going on. Again, those resources are different. When we pile all of them together, we don't get the outcomes we want because these students want to be in school. They want to do better, but the support they need is different.
I think just having a more case-to-case basis approach. I mean, I feel like no situation is going to be different, even if they're both about trauma or even if the parent is the root problem. I feel like two very similar situations can have two very different solutions to them. So I feel like what he said, the school kind of needs to take action there and say, this is what's best for this situation based off having that personal connection. I mean, one conversation with somebody can tell you so much more about them than any amount of statistics about that person. You could show somebody everything they've ever done on paper, and then you could talk to them for like 5 minutes and you could learn so much more about them. So that on a personal level, the school needs to get with that parent involved and that child involved and then come with the solution based on a case-to-case basis.
thank you, Ms. Grace.
What has not been mentioned is those absences show up in the test scores.
Yes,
82% of the
academically.
kids not passing the state test, and that has not been mentioned. If the child is not there, and someone in the audience mentioned not passing the test because they're not there.
They have to be there.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience? Any more questions?
I think we have a question for you, about how to fund schools. I was wondering what,
if school boards could have more money to have an extra bus just to pick up late kids. And maybe have a mental health worker on that bus or a social worker to deal with what happened. I mean, when I was teaching years ago, we picked up the kids ourselves. And so and then it became liability issue.
And I think that is something to think about. In preparing for this, I read an article about when students are absent, in this school district, when students are absent, one school had 21 students absent. They sent out the child missing from school. Went out and said, your student is absent. So that is a point to consider. That I actually call my kids.
So to answer your question, we have 4 McKinney-Vento buses. McKinney-Vento is for homeless students and families. And those same buses pick up our foster care kids. To pick up one kid who may have started in Warren during the school year and moved to Avon, because by law, if that kid moves during the year, we have to pick that kid up. To pick up one kid cost us $2,000 a week. So there's some math that goes along with picking up those students, and we have over 850 homeless students that we pick up every day, on top of 200 foster care kids. So we are trying, but there's an economic cost connected to that. And picking up foster care kids is an unfunded mandate. No, picking up McKinney-Vento kids is an unfunded mandate. Foster care, yeah. Got a question over here. Go ahead, sir. Yes.
Sure. There's a school.
I'm gonna hold it.
Yes, Mr. King. Does your school or district or county or situation have a student advisory council where students can meet and suggest ideas like you, because you're in the trenches? Does the city or the charters or any district you know of have such a student advisory council?
Again, just off a personal experience basis and based off what a peer-to-peer basis, very little youth input is given at school boards. I've been to IPS meetings. There's very, very little youth involved with anything that's management wise. They'll be on student councils or student run councils, and it's kind of gimmicky, it feels like to me, because the most they'll work on is like a banner or a parade, but when it comes to making decisions, especially systemic changes or changes to the school system as a whole or how the school policy operates, there's very little youth input there, I feel, from my experience. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Any other questions? We got about 1 minute left. Any other burning questions you have? Back here.
Site transitional housing program for families and their children. But we failed to recognize the substance abuse problem. And it's much greater now than it has ever been. And so a lot of the youth that I see or I talk with, they didn't come to school because they had to help mother or father with their substance use issues. So those are things that really need to be looked at as well, not just about being absent from school, but why are you really absent from school and they're not telling you that? Our mom OD'd this morning, and so I work in the prisons. I teach mindfulness in the prison. Asked a young man, why are you so angry? And he said, one morning my mom told me and my 7-year-old brother, every man for themselves, and just left us. We did okay when school was in because we could go to school, we could eat, but then when school was out, we didn't do so good. And I was trying to steal some bologna for us to eat, and I got caught. And I ended up in the system, and my brother and I separated. And this became my pipeline to prison because I was angry and because he remained angry. So there's so many other things, and we need, somebody said, social workers that do more than just sit there and say, okay, come back and see me next week. I mean, really in tune with what the children are doing, like Mr. King. They need to be heard. Mm-hmm. They need to be seen.
Yes. We're at a point in our school system where our family liaisons, they're afraid to do home visits. They've had guns put on them. They've been threatened, drugs when they walk up to the door. So we're in the process of teaching how to do a wellness check versus a home visit. And so we have to cover that. And the first time in 35 years, this is the first time that we're going to do a workshop on how to do a good home visit. So, and on top of that, when we talk about drugs, our kids are bringing drugs to school based on what their parents have. So our kids are bringing gummy bears, brownies, and things like that, and other kids are ingesting those drugs. So we have a lot of things to deal with these days that we didn't have to deal with before, but we are trying.
Sorry, I know we're wrapping up here. Just a thought-provoking question before we end it off. In a lot of the situations, like he just said, they're scared to go to the home and to show up to where the kid has to stay at. Like that resonates with me because the school mental health advisors are scared to go where I have to go to every day. You know, when home is a war zone, you don't want to go home. You know, if you're scared to go to my house, how do you think I feel going home every day? You know, I feel like that's huge. That's huge.
Powerful. Yeah. Good ending.
You want to do your final question?
We covered.
Yeah, we're good.
We covered.
You covered everything that you want to cover.
Covered everything.
Let's give this panel a big hand because they have shown their expertise on this topic as well as giving us a lot to think about. James Taylor didn't talk about his center. I'm bragging about it at the Moorhead Resource Center, which is set up to help students in Warren Township in particular. And center, I saw all the things that were available, and he has a model center based on what Fort Wayne School District did. But I would, if anyone has a school connection, try to go there and visit his center. Thank you so much, everyone that was on the panel, for all of your words of wisdom. I think absenteeism was a hot topic, but what we're going to talk about with positive school discipline and how schools can change in order that children would feel welcome at school is going to be our next topic. All of our presenters are in your program bios. Please take the time to read the information about each one of the presenters and to understand some of the things that they have done in their life. I present to you now Kate Rollicke. Did I get it right?
It's a little finicky.
And she's, again, is with McCoy, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about herself. Very interesting story.
We don't have time for the whole life story. But thank you. I'm Kate Rollicke. I'm the program director at the Marion County Commission on Youth. And I'm here today with the panelists to talk about positive school discipline. And so to get us started, I would love for our panelists to each take about 1 minute tops. Introduce yourself and tell us about your current role in your organization or within the community. And so we'll start with Dr. Baker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? It doesn't sound like it's on.
It's on.
Is it on?
It is on.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. So my name is Dr. Teresa Baker, and I'm the founder of and CEO for TAB Educational Consultants, and we work with schools, we write grants, that kind of thing. I'm a former elementary school principal, and I am the new board chair for Arts for Learning, and I'm on the ABIDA committee, and it's similar to a DEI committee. Also, I served on the board for CPLI and worked with positive school discipline for 8 years now. I keep trying to pull that time back. This has brought me into this work. I wish I had it when I was an elementary school principal, and so that's why I'm still involved, because I deeply, deeply care about our children and our future.
How's everybody doing today? My name is my name is Patrick Collier. I'm here today with CPLI, but also representing my mentoring program that I'm involved with called New Boy, New Breed of Youth. I'm a junior mentor through the program. I've been involved with the program for about going on 6 years now, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to mentor kids under me to try to do the same thing that my mentor did for me. And also, I'm one of the CEOs and founders of CC Cares, which is a nonprofit where we go back into the community and try to feed into the best we can. My counterpart Cam, he's not here today, but I'm kind of holding it down for him, and I'm happy to be on the panel and talk a little bit for you guys today.
I am Nicole Kelly. I am a classroom teacher for IPS, where I teach inside of a residential treatment facility. So I'm in one of the alternative schools. And then I also have the privilege of serving on the school board for the Metropolitan School District of Pike Township. So I'm wearing multiple hats. I was a former social worker and then switched over to education. And then currently working on a master's in school counseling. So combining all the training and things that I've done through the years into one thing. I've worked with children and youth ever since I probably was Patrick's age. As soon as I graduated from high school, I began running. This is also my home church. So as soon as I graduated from high school, I began working with the youth ministry here. So since I was old enough to work with youth, I've been working with youth. So that's the short version of my story.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Bowden, and I'm a third grade teacher with IPS. I teach at Clarence Farrington Elementary School 61. I'm grade level lead and also the lead trauma coach at our school, and this is my 27th year in education.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Gwendolyn Johnson. I am blessed to have the opportunity to serve at Pike High School. I'm in my second career. I served 30 plus years in higher education as a teacher and administrator. And so I am at Pike High School, my fourth year. And I wonder why I didn't do this 30 years ago, but nonetheless, I have the opportunity and the good fortune of coordinating the Ed Professions program and preparing future teachers, where students go out 3 times a week to area schools within Pike to see if they really love or want to be teachers. And so we're hoping to increase that pipeline of educators. Likewise, I am the lead trauma coach at Pike High School.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I do want to let everyone know I am not James Taylor, so I don't have any vignettes to share, little stories. So I'm going to use my cheat sheet of a script here and just say that this panel will be discussing the ways that schools and community organizations and members can support our youth through positive school discipline practices and creating a safe, caring, and supportive school environment. And unlike James, also, I may hold questions until the end, just to make sure that we can try and have a thorough discussion here with our panelists. But write your questions down so we can ask them at the end. I would love to direct the first question to our teachers initially, current and former. What are the challenges that students, teachers, and schools are facing related to school discipline and academic achievement and the disproportionate outcomes for students that our state and county data reveal?
If you don't mind, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I think the challenges that our students are facing have many layers to it. We've already had the first panel discuss attendance. We have issues with special education. Poverty and trauma, of course, is, I think, at the forefront of everyone's mind lately. But on top of all of that, we have educational standards that are made so, and the expectation is that everyone will pass the standard at the same rate, regardless of what language you speak, no matter what level you're at, no matter what challenges you have. And just as an example, I had a student last year who came from Uganda, spoke Swahili, and we had no students at our school that spoke Swahili except his sister. And she was other than someone for him to communicate with during the day, there was no one else for him to communicate with. So as a classroom teacher, we have students who don't have the language ability because they simply just don't speak the language. But the expectation is that they're going to test in English, they're going to pass the test in English, and it automatically sets the students up for failure. And then teachers are looked at and, you're not doing your job, you need to do this, we need to do this. And knowing that we have a lot of discrepancies with supports that are needed on campus. I think that that's a big issue as well. Social workers definitely support staff, helping to get, one-on-one. If we need to contact a parent, we have to, contact an outside agency to hopefully get somebody that can translate and speak that language and patch the call through. And it's overwhelming, and it makes our job that much more difficult because we have to involve so many other people from the outside instead of people that we should have on the inside.
We've heard so many of the challenges this morning, well, with the earlier panel, and we likewise have so many of those experiences at our school as well. Some of the things, the challenges that we find, and you're well aware of them, that's after the pandemic, we came back to school business as usual. And so, students are traumatized, teachers are traumatized, administrators are traumatized, everybody's traumatized. But we didn't really, in my opinion, in our experience, that we didn't get the training of how to infuse us back into the classroom, how to re-educate students to be back in a seat. Because they've been at home for 2.5, 3 years, and they're depending on their phone and laying in bed, on class on Zoom, not in class on Zoom, in sleep, or and so they brought those same kind of behaviors back to the school. And then, of course, teachers were traumatized as well, and so we have the opportunity to come into the classroom with traumatized students, and yet we are also traumatized. And so that's one of the big things that we're still, even years later, trying to figure out how to make that work, how to make sure that we see the students as whole, how we're going to be whole, how to meet the standards, how to do all those things and still know our students and provide a good quality education. So that's one of the things. I'll stop with that. But we got to figure out a better way to do that, because although we've a couple of years out now, we're still having the experience of results of being on the path.
I'll go ahead. With, particularly in regard to culture and discipline, making sure, probably one of the biggest things is not recognizing culture and the needs of students. So then when students come to school, those needs aren't met, and you don't know how to meet, we have staff that don't know how to meet the needs. So then you have programs like Positive School Discipline Institute that put a culturally relevant emphasis on addressing trauma, on addressing the needs of not just that student, but the district. And then looking at the districts taking a stance on how do we address family needs. So again, involving the community, involving parents and all of those that are involved, and all the challenges that go with that. But I believe we're smart enough to come up with ways to make that happen.
Patrick, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot.
No, you're okay. Yeah. Well, when it comes to, when you're talking about discipline in schools, one of the a huge thing that I see, especially dealing with young men through New Boy, is that there's a lack of structure and discipline at home. And from my experience, you can't really expect a child to follow disciplinary rules that you try to enforce, whether it's for their benefit or, they know it or not, because they're not used to that at home. So if their mom's trying to get them to get up, go to school, clean a room, do the dishes, stop hanging out with these people, stop doing this drug, you telling them to sit down in the class and pay attention definitely isn't going to work. Because, and that's just being honest. And I see it every day with dudes from little as 12 all the way up until 18 when you get to my age. And when you get to my age, that's an adult problem. That's a correctional problem. It gets that far. So there has to be something done to, one, see if then there's something in the home that can be helped as far as the parent. Like, do you need help disciplining, not discipline, but do you need help adding structure to the home? Do you have multiple kids that you're just not equipped with the resources or the abilities to help or even like direct those kids? That's a big thing that my mother faced, and a part of why I went down the path that I went down. So that's critical to me when talking about discipline in schools. It really starts in the home, wherever it is lacking.
I'm also curious to tie back to something that Dr. Johnson was talking about, Patrick, the trauma of the pandemic, of being a young person who you're in school one day, then everything shuts down, you're not in the school building, then you're brought back to the school building. What was that experience like for you? And then also to expand it, Dr. Baker, some of the systemic issues that relate back to this topic.
100%. Well, my experience personally with, going from online to in school, I didn't really do work online. I'm gonna be fully transparent. I didn't really do work online. I took that as an opportunity to really chill, not do much. I went outside a lot. I say that, but that's just because there really wasn't much to do. But from not being in school at all, doing online classes here and there, to going directly into the back into a school setting, I can say for me personally, I was in and out of a lot of foster homes at the time. So even with that, it was a lot of change, and then going back into school, where not only is it a new school, it's a new township, it's a new grade, it's new freedoms that come with being in that new grade. It's so many things that you got to take into account that you do have to take into account when a child is transitioned from not being in school for this amount of time to being in school until, hey, well, you're gonna be in school now until you graduate. It's scary, but almost it's scary, but it can be helped with the right amount of support.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah.
I am so impressed with the youth that's here today, how articulate you are, and how well you captured what happened. Dr. Johnson, you're correct. No one was taught how to deal with re-entering school. I can remember the first day I heard about the pandemic. I was in Washington Township School, and I totally freaked out as an adult. So I can only imagine how the students felt. I'm thinking, did I catch it already? I mean, what do I do? And then reintegrating back into society, talking to people. I kind of struggled having a decent conversation. Should I have my mask on? Should I have my mask off? Am I too close? I'm a hugger. Ooh, I can't hug anyone. So I can only imagine, how it would be difficult for those who already struggle with self-regulation, how to behave, and you're not engaged, because let's face it, people have to be engaged with one another as human beings. The only other animal that I know that animals would be probably elephants and parrots. Parrots can have nervous breakdowns if they're not with others. And so imagine how animals felt when their world changed, just like the eclipse. So when my world changed and re-entering school, I had to remember that children that already had historical trauma, multi-generational trauma, as we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, their very, very basic of needs were not met, some prior to the pandemic. So how do we reintegrate them? And there was no training. We just thrust everybody back in and said, go for it. Now we're going to catch up. Now we're going to close that achievement gap. And it's just not possible. When you miss a day of school, you miss a day of school. We can't make that up. That's not going to re-happen. And just like when we pull them out and toss them out of school, pull them from class, they miss that lesson. It's not authentic, like when that teacher gave that lesson, that interaction with their peers. So I think one of the things we need to take a step back and dig in deep as to why and how we can help them. I think we need to ask the parents that do participate. All parents do not participate. I don't think a parent in their good mental health wants their children to suffer or go to someone else's house to raise them or pick up someone else's identity. So to be strong, we as educators need that support, and we need to take a step back and be understanding and stop thrusting the word test on our students. You are in school to learn. You are in school to learn. We're going to help you learn. The test, they'll pass the test if they learn. I mean, it's just that simple. So I think those are some of the things as I, go through schools and take anecdotal notes for new teachers, to relax because there's stress. We have social media still, distraction, major distraction. They take precedence over what the teacher has to say. So we have to ask students what they need and try to relate. And that doesn't mean that you do not have strict guidance. You have to have guidance. You have to have learning. Sometimes is chaotic, but how they navigate those systems is what we need to teach them, and ourselves to be a little patient,
Yeah, thank you. So shifting gears a little bit to think about the great work that we've been doing in Indiana, the Children's Policy and Law Initiative has been hosting a Positive School Discipline Institute since 2017. That promotes culturally responsive, trauma-informed practices, 2 words we've already heard today, culture and trauma. How important is it for all school personnel to engage in these kinds of trainings to minimize exclusion and effectively address discipline issues?
If I may jump out there. I think that's super important. I think that when teachers have the proper training and are equipped with the skills to interact with the youth on a level that's deeper than I'm gonna sit up here, or not sit up here, but like I'm gonna stand and kind of point at a board and teach. Because I've had teachers where it was like that before. I think that it's beneficial to a child. I notice it. I know even if a kid acts like he doesn't care, acts like if he doesn't notice it, you notice when a person is being genuine, when a person is there to try to help you learn, when a person isn't kind of there to just point a finger when you're not doing something that you're supposed to do. Because ultimately, I think sometimes, and I felt like this at a time, I came to school to kind of just get kind of pushed around a little bit by rules and by just the lack of direction, because it often felt like I was going to school, information was getting thrown at me, I wasn't really understanding it, and I was just getting sent right back home after that. It wasn't until I want to say sophomore year that I had a group of teachers that kind of really formed a collective to try to help all of their students that they were interacting with learn and pass with flying colors, not just move them on to the next grade. So I think that is huge.
I'll go ahead. I will say from my experience, I was in elementary school a long time ago, but the experience that I had one teacher that changed the trajectory of my education. And I get emotional whenever I think about her, so I'm going to do my best to not. Because I had a mother who was an educator, and had she not done the things that she did, my path could have been, I would have been that forgotten child that was there. Nobody pushed, nobody saw me, nobody would have encouraged me. Then I had a principal who, at one point, I was a talker, and so I got, for discipline, I was sent, the rule in the cafeteria was when the light goes out, no talking. So one of my Girl Scout buddies and I, we were sitting next to each other, and to this day, 40 years later, we're still friends. And we were talking in the lunchroom. So we were sent to the principal's office for an offense that, and of course, all those years ago, you could paddle and all of those things. So I was sent to the principal as a first or second grader, sent to the office because the lights went out. We wanted to finish our conversation. It's lunchtime, so we've been in the classroom all this time, not able to talk. Now we have time to talk, so we were talking. And so we were both paddled and sent back to class. Those first 2 years of my school probably were the most traumatic. Not that I had a life full of trauma by any means, but the first 2 of my school career where we did a lot of things happened at that point in time where we had first and second graders transitioning classes where that's not a skill most first and second graders have. And if you know me, you know I don't do fast pack up transitions. That's just
not in my nature. I have one pace. And so as a first and second grade, you tell me, get my pencil, get my this, get my that, get to the next class. I'm first and second grade. So yeah, my stuff was lost. My stuff was here and there and everywhere. I didn't know how to do that successfully until I finally had, so then I got to Sally Thruston in third grade. She changed my world. She saw me, she heard me. And I'll leave it at that.
I'll add to that how important it is for all teachers to be a part of that. I think it's critical that teachers are educated, informed on the positive school discipline and trauma-informed care. I think it's more important, as important, that it starts with at the top. That your principal, that your school leader endorses it, that your school principal says, this is what we're doing. Because honestly, we rolled it out last year. We 5 teachers and 2 admins had the good fortune of going through that training last year, and it was amazing training. Thanks to all those that made that happen. But we came back and introduced it and rolled it out, and we would have teachers who know us personally say, I'm not doing that shit. We're like, wait a minute, we just doing it. And they were like, I don't have time for that. Okay, so there's that. That's just the honesty of, hey, I got lesson plans, I got grading papers, I got doing all this other stuff. This is just something else we're going to do. But our principal has said, this is what Pike High School believes in. This is what we're going to. This is what we're going to do more of, because our students are traumatized. Teachers also, we've had those conversations, are traumatized. But this is what we're going to do. We understand that we have to know our students. We have to make sure that we are engaging with them, because our intent, and our principal, Mr. Wally, Jeremy Wally is our great principal, said that we have the intention of keeping our students in school. And so what we have to do is find ways to keep their tails in the seats. And so, yes, we're all going to go through the training on some level. We are going to do this because this is what the culture of Pike High School exists going forward. And so I think that it is important, and they'll get buy-in, because I'm probably one of the most old school of old school. But some of the old school stuff just isn't going to work right now. It just isn't going to work. The things that we used to do, in paddling and yelling at kids and talking about their mamas and cussing them out and all that kind of stuff. You can't do that because they'll give it back to you. And so, but I think that it starts with, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, some of the strategies, knowing the students, knowing who they are. But it is important that every teacher has some familiarity, and some will have different levels, but every teacher on the campus would have some familiarity.
I like to follow up with that, building that healthy relationships between students and adults, and defining what that looks like, because it's still a professional relationship, but it's a caring relationship, because you are the adult and you're in control of that situation. Developing culturally responsive curriculum and instruction, and providing that professional development. And I laughed as a principal, because Gwen and I remember when we pulled out those big curriculum frameworks and books, and folks wanted to let them sit on the shelves. They didn't think they actually would have to do it after we trained them. And I agree with Dr. Johnson. It's like, oh, really? Is that what you thought this was about? So insisting, if you're part of the school, then you're part of what's going on that's going to improve children. And I say that with respect to teachers, because we need to provide supports. We really can't tell them, we're going to support you, and think, I don't have time to do that.
Right.
You have to make time, because you don't want to lie to them, because you don't want them to lie to children. So you have to be honest with yourself. I'll make the time. And that's, even if I could do it all over again, I would tell the district, I'm making the time to support them because I want them to get it right. So I'll get this piece of paper to you a little later, but they come first. And so I think we have to be bold and strong and support them so that we can keep folks in the profession. And the other thing is, make sure that we don't put the children out the first time. Your story was heartbreaking. And I just felt so bad for you, because you're just a little person. I still have trouble getting out of the house. I'm no longer a little person gathering all my belongings. So our expectations for folks not to talk, Dr. Kelly, if you and I could not talk, what would happen? We wouldn't make it. We'd be in a corner all the time. So understanding that when we get together, we want to chat. It's not in the scope of things, what is chatting?
And I'll come back to, I also participated in Positive School. My school that I teach at did go through the program, and getting the buy-in from my fellow, I was our trauma lead coach for our building, and getting the buy-in from my fellow teachers was the biggest sticking point that I had to like really say, guys, and we were coming back. We were all traumatized. And then on top of that, I had some personal things going on where I was coming back from an injury. It was a lot going on during that time, but we were persistent to get through the curriculum and say, for our kids, we want to be better. And a lot of what I took away even from the Positive School Discipline training was that as the adults, we've got to be okay first. Before we can go in and say to Johnny, Timmy, Susie, Bobby, do my work, I've got to see Johnny, Timmy, Bobby, Susie, where they are, see where they're coming from, know a little bit about them, and then take that lesson and say, okay, Timmy likes basketball. Timmy likes this. Susie likes that. How can I bring those elements into my lesson so that I've got your engagement, I've got your buy-in, you want to do my work because I've let you take that project now and I've let you research the topic that you care about. So it takes, and then the teachers all speaking the same, like when they're in the hall, doesn't matter what classroom they go to, if we're all speaking the same language of, I love you enough to not put you out. Even though that's what you want it. That's what you told me. Let me go back to my room because I'm in a residential treatment facility. So I want to go to my room. Not right now. We're in school. We need you. Our discussion is not going to be the same without you. Well, I'm not just not going to say anything, but you'll still be here. Your presence will be with us. You'll hear what we're talking about. You'll take it in. And then inevitably they'll hear something they may disagree with or agree with, and then they'll say something. Mm-hmm. And so, but keeping all of those things in mind, you may be that one caring adult that saw them. So it takes everybody, from the janitor, the lunch lady, in the buildings. There are some kids who won't talk to anybody in the building but that lunch lady they go through the line with. And she knows everything that's going on with that kid. So if this student's having an issue in your class and you go talk to the bus driver, the cafeteria worker, they may give you a whole insight on why they're missing school, why they're sleepy in your class, why they're so angry, why they are so whatever it is. You go and talk to that key adult that they've shared with, or you may not be their favorite teacher, but you know who their favorite teacher is, and you talk to that teacher. And they can, because there's times kids will tell me, they may tell me something they didn't tell the other teacher, and I can kind of say, they got something going on. And you don't even always have to know everything. Sorry.
I think that's a great jumping off point, Nicole, your point of we need to take care of ourselves first. And I'm going to direct this one to Leslie initially. How can educators and community organizations become champions to make a difference in having positive school discipline practices?
Well, I think with, when you get on an airplane, they go through the safety precautions, and the first thing they tell you is you put your mask on yourself should the mask drop. There's a reason for that. You have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of somebody else. And I think as educators, we have to remember that we take on, if we have 20 students in our class or if we have 32 students in our class, we're taking on all of that every day. Mm-hmm. If you're in high school and you've got 6 periods, you're taking, 6 periods worth of students' stuff on
every day. And it is overwhelming. And we have to first take care of ourselves. Then as a staff, we have to take care of ourselves before we can help our students. And as a school, we need to take care of ourselves before we can reach out to the families. And, you know, that school part includes the kids because that's who we have that first contact with. That's who we see every day. I can tell, you know, teaching third grade, it's a little bit different than high school. But, you know, I see a student walk in, I could tell, so watching them come down the hall, that they've had an off morning. And it's like, oh, it's going to go off today. Something's going to happen. And I can just see it. And it's like, I have to be the very first line of defense. Greet that student at the door, check in, you know, hey, how's your morning going so far? You know, do you need to talk to me for a few minutes? Do you need a hug? You want a handshake, high five? You want to go to the calming corner? I need to do whatever I can to try to stop that from going any further. And then be mindful that I have to go back and, even though I have to do attendance and all this other stuff, check in with that student to make sure that they're okay and that we can go on. And I have to constantly, you know, it's like manage those other behaviors going on in the class. So there's, you know, a whole lot going on. And, you know, we have to look at this as a whole. The buy-in from staff is crucial. The buy-in from the community is crucial. We have to first have a system in place within our school site before we reach out to the outside so we can explain, this is what we're doing, this is what we need, this is how we think that you can help us. Will you be willing to help us? When we have our vision, we can share that vision with others. And I know before I moved back to Indiana in 2016, the last 10 years that I was in Southern California, I worked for Compton Unified School District. And in the years that I was there, I saw a huge change in things that were going on in the district and these positive things that were happening. And to see, you know, it wasn't the reputation of Compton from the 80s and 90s. It was 2007, 2006 when I got hired there. And, you know, we went from maybe one Gates Scholar at Compton High School. And when I left, I think we had 10 throughout the entire district. And that's pretty phenomenal when you have, you know, these students from Compton that, you know, are all different shades of brown. And they can say, I'm a Gates Scholar. I get to pick which college I want. And I get to go for free. And it's amazing to see when you can get the community surrounding the students and uplifting them, what can happen. And we have to start in our own school.
I'll say that my perspective on building community starts in the classroom. And so we get to know each other. We have a community in our class. And I'm fortunate that my students have 3-hour blocks 5 days a week. So we're able to build a community there. But that's important. I tell my students every day, come prepared to learn something every day. That's the mantra. You know, so now there's like, yeah, okay, Dr. Johnson, come prepared to every day. You come to school to learn. I don't have time for all that. And I tell them, I'm old school now, so don't do that because I don't have time. I'm nervous. And they'll laugh. They laugh, but I tell them, look, I'm here to teach you. I'm here because I love it. And so you're going to learn something whether you like it or not. And if I have to call your mama, I have you stand right there while I call your mother because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. So the community is mom and dad or a grandparent or whoever that guardian is at home with them. And I tell them, look, I'm old. I don't have time for this now. And I'll tell the parent that. And I'll say, because I want your child to learn. And they know that they're coming to learn every day. And so they'll call me and ask, well, how are they doing today? They love your class. How's it going? They're doing great. And sometimes I call when there's nothing wrong so that I'm not always calling if there's an issue.
Right.
And so we build a community in there, and then the parents and the grandparents and the guardians, they send supplies, they do all that stuff because they know that the community starts there and the kids are coming to school to learn and they want to be there. But it didn't start out that way. You know, it starts out a little rocky because they got to, you know, make their points and they got to let me know who they are and all that kind of stuff. But it is important that you build that for me and for I believe for our school, that we get to know our students and build that community in the school in the classroom.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask what I call a spicy question. So follow along. What are some strategies to continue implementing culturally responsive practices despite the current political climate that may chill authentic conversations regarding equity and race?
I'll go. You go first. I'll go because giving choice. So my assignment is my assignment, but then I say, how do you want to do this? So I will have the resources there. So the representation of different resources. So if I have students of color, if I have students that speak a different language, I'm going to get the resources in my room for them to have access to. Have access for those students. I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to say to my kids, I'm going to know what they like, what they want, and I'm going to say, and go try to help them find those things. In my room, I'm going to have posters of different people of different background. I'm going to have lots of representation of things, but there's going to be a lot of choice, and not necessarily what the standards are or what the expectation is, but the how it's done and the way that they present it. So you might do a poster, you might do a written assignment, you might do a slide presentation or something like that. You're going to do the assignment and we're going to tailor it for you, which for I'm blessed that I'm in a small setting, so I can say to the six or seven that are in my room, we can individualize and tailor. I know that's harder when you have 30, 40, but you can. Education is supposed to be individualized anyway. So as we tailor things for what our kids need, if you're looking at what they need, you're going to have, whether culturally, educationally, socially, emotionally, all of those things are thought about when you're designing that assignment. If I know I have a student that struggles with reading, I'm not going to give him an article. I'm going to find, it's going to be the topic, it's going to be the subject, or many sources now will even let you pick the different lexiles. So I'm going to get the lexile that they need. I'm going to maybe even have to take some time and read with them to help them understand it, help them show them. I teach high school, so I have kids who, because of pandemic, because of all the things, didn't know how to take notes. So I'm teaching note skills. I'm teaching individually all of these things and recognizing that I can't teach everybody the same way. I have to individually tailor instruction. And even when you're talking about instruction for instructors, teaching instruction, like, I think some of that needs to change as well for how teachers are. Even when we're doing trainings, we're expected to go adults. There sometimes how we learn that's not taken in. So looking at education all the way across. So I guess I went a long way around it, but individualizing and seeing, I can't get away from seeing who those individual students that come in your room, who they are. And then as you see them, you see what they need. And then, no, you don't have it. So I'll go get the librarian who may have this piece. I'll go get the social worker who has this piece they need. I'll go get all these people that we have surrounding us, the community, all of those people, bring them in, the translators, everybody, and say, now I can meet the needs of this student. It takes the old proverb, it takes a village. It's never been more true than in this time we live in now.
I'd like to add to that a little bit. I think that lots of people get confused, the two CRTs, critical race theory, which is a college topic, and culturally responsive teaching are two different things.
Right.
And so when you're talking about culture, you have children of Indianapolis has really grown in surrounding areas and demographics. So it naturally comes up in history And if it doesn't, you place that in, you plug it in. That's your responsibility as a teacher. And we shouldn't have to apologize to anyone about learning about different people. I heard a young man that is now a filmmaker, and believe he said he's 28, when he happened to be Asian American, Taiwanese descent, and he said people used to tell him, "You're good looking for a Chinese guy." And he didn't know at that time that that was offensive. And then he said, "You guys are really good in math." And so we usually think about those things typically happening to African Americans or other brown people. And so I'm saying that to say this. He did not know he probably should have been upset. He didn't know what he didn't know. You should not be embarrassed or ashamed to talk about other races. How do you get to know about the world? Our standards call for that. And as a teacher, if they didn't call for it, it's your responsibility, I don't know about you guys, to teach that. We used to have international days. We didn't go into race, but we went into different countries and different cultures. I couldn't wait for the international fair. We chose, and that's how we learned. And so we should have carried that on when we see people looking different from us. But sometimes you don't know what you should do, because there's a culture that you come to school with from your home, by your ethnicity, by your socioeconomic background. That's a culture. And so the more the parents know, the more you grow. Just as we talked about the discrepancy with attendance. I go into one school, they've gone to Europe for 7 days. That's cool beans. But the same parent that can't get, a sitter or work a split shift, and the oldest child has to watch the children, they get punitive damage. It's punishment. And if they can even get the letter, Mr. Taylor, sometimes they're changing addresses. They may be homeless. You cited a case where the family made good money, but it wasn't good enough to pay the rent. It wasn't enough for that number of people that they allow to occupy a house. So when you get to know your audience, your constituents in your school, you take the time to learn about them, then you'll know. I had a principal, Mr. Litz, at School 15. He took his teachers on a bus tour of the neighborhood. So they knew what they were dealing with. He made no excuses. Those people knew that they can count on him for support. And long after he retired, he continued to, as best he could, to provide support. If you're marketing a product, you better know they know who smokes cigarettes. You better know they know who vape. You better know they know who's going to buy that perfume. Because they take the time to get to know our shopping habits. We have to, in order to correct, we have to connect with the people that we're working with.
I want to add. And so, we have to be honest to say those are some important, difficult conversations.
They are.
There's some difficult conversations, and talking about race in school, and they can be hard. None of us wants to end up on the TV because we said something or express our beliefs, or it was misinterpreted, or a student went home and told their parent that you said something. And so while those are difficult conversations, they're real. And sometimes we just don't know, but ignorance is no excuse, as we know. And so in our classes, we have to talk about what microaggressions. We have to talk about them because some students just don't know. Teachers just don't know. So we talk about it early and we infuse that culture across the curriculum. Having those conversations, those deep conversations, and we understand why people feel the way they feel, or maybe they had an experience, and so they believe everybody's going to be painted with the same brush. And so we have teachers who've had some bad experiences who look at a certain kid that comes into the school, and we know that the research, the data say that Black and brown kids are disciplined. Tend to be disciplined more higher than other students in the school. In our school, we have the data that support that as well. But why? And so we have to have those important conversations. They're hard conversations, and teachers need to have the conversations and tell why they're afraid. And in our school, we have cohort groups. And so if it says an example, a white teacher says, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do when the student is 6 feet tall and I really am intimidated. And so we have to have those conversations where they have a safe space to go and talk with their colleagues about what to do in that situation. And so, yeah, those things are going to happen, and they're real. And we can't not talk about them. We have to talk about them and address them because people feel how they feel. Students feel how they feel. The teachers feel how they feel, and they're real to them, whether they're valid. They're real to that person. And so, yeah, we have to have those conversations, but we have to have them in purposeful ways and not when we're just angry. Not when something happened and we want to put the kid out of our class. We have to have those conversations before that happens so that we don't just automatically put the kid out. And sometimes you might need to put the kid out because positive school discipline doesn't mean that we're going to ignore behavior. It's bad. So we have to make sure we understand the culture. And if it's not your culture, learn about it. And so it's important to have those conversations, and we ask teachers, well, how do you fit that into learning about it during the day when you're already doing it and you go home and you're grading papers, because it has to be a priority. And so some of that we have during our PLC time, some of that we have during our mandated training time, so the teachers can get that education, they can get that information, they know what to do before the situation happens in their class.
So to make sure that we have a little bit of time for questions, I'd ask each of you just to share your final 1 minute. What's the last lingering thought that you want to leave with everybody when it comes to how they can use their role to champion building optimal learning experiences that provide needed student support services for all students to achieve academic success? Your 1 minute of fame going now.
Could you read?
Patrick first.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just your last thought when it comes to what would you want everyone to take away in thinking about what their role is?
My biggest thing, and every time I get up here on a panel, every time I'm in a room where I'm able to speak my mind and speak my truth about what I know works true to youth, because I am one. I deal with them, not even deal with them, I hang around with them every day, is connection. You gotta connect with us. You gotta connect with the youth. You gotta find out what they like. You gotta find out how they speak. You gotta find out what they're saying in order to better understand them. You can't come there with the idea of you gotta come up to my level. You gotta understand what I'm saying. You gotta understand my words. You gotta do what I say. With kids, especially nowadays with social media, with everything that's being pushed to the forefront of their minds and just society, you gotta come down and almost understand where we're at and then bring us up to where you're at. Because it's not gonna work if you're trying to hey, you gotta get up here, but we don't understand what you're saying, so we're just kind of off here lingering to the side almost. And a lot of times kids get left out like that, and that's how you have kids that are in the juvenile justice system. They go down the path with drugs. Kids that are in the foster system, they feel left out, they feel forgotten, because people don't take the time to connect with them. So if you're a teacher, if you're a social worker, if you're somebody that deals with kids or youth on a daily basis, I can't stress enough the importance of just trying to connect. Because I promise you, kids, even if it doesn't seem like it, kids, they understand and they recognize when someone is genuinely trying. Even if you think it's goofy, silly, and you kind of get a little embarrassed in the moment, in the long run, we do understand when you're trying, and we do appreciate it, and we will acclimate to what you're doing and kind of try to meet you at where you're at.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks.
Patrick, you and your colleagues are the epitome of everything that we need to do to have more students like you come forth, have a sense of safety, a sense of identity, building your self-esteem and your comfort level of speaking before adults, because that's very difficult to do. I'm not really sure if I could have done that at your age. How old are you again?
I'm 18.
Maybe not so much. Still, not ready as much as a talker I am today, but I think that when we look at the youth justice, if anyone with a heart and some sense of intelligence can see the possibilities and how close we come to losing children, youth like this, I mean, just, you think you want to cry? It makes me want to cry even more. There's so many that have been lost that epitomize the language that he's using. The context in which they use it in, and the content is so, so important. So if we don't walk away with anything else, we know that there's hope, on the horizon, and there's hope right now. And if we can just, I feel like taking the collection, just pass the hat so we can continue to support our programs. But it means so much. And, to top it off for me, I have 2 young black males. They're adults now. And my heart is singing big songs with all of you. So I love you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
I'll go ahead and go. To piggyback off of what's been said, before I can teach you, I must reach you.
Yes.
So I'll leave that. And then I saw this poem at a training some years ago, and I said, if I ever had a chance to use it, and when I was serving before people, I would use it. It says, "'Cause I ain't got a pencil. I woke myself up because I ain't got an alarm clock. Dug in a dirty clothes basket because ain't nobody washed my uniform. Brushed my hair and teeth in the dark because the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready because my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time, took us to eat a good breakfast. Then when I got to class, the teacher fussed because I ain't got a pencil." So again, seeing where our kids are, meeting them, holding them, setting the expectation. So nobody said don't hold them accountable. No one said don't raise the bar. No one is saying that. We're saying see where you are and bring you where you need to be. I can't do that if I don't see you. So
what I think I would like the audience today to take away is that we're in this for the long haul. I've been teaching now for 27 years. I've seen a lot of things from No Child Left Behind to now our new science of reading that we're going to be embarking on. And when I was teaching in Compton, the 2016 election year was here, and there was a certain candidate that was saying some certain things that were really negative. And I had my 5-year-old kindergartners absolutely in tears, thinking that they were going to be sent back to Mexico. And I'm trying to teach math. And I've got students that are all upset about being sent to Mexico because they're Hispanic. Well, they aren't from Mexico. They're from Central America. They were from Venezuela. They were from Uruguay. They were from San Salvador, or El Salvador, or, wherever. But it wasn't Mexico. And I thought, this is just so horrible. These children have to deal with these sorts of things. And for a 5-year-old who sees this on the news and they don't understand completely what's happening, but they understand enough that it scares them, and they're carrying that with them. And I think that, we have to be that calming force for the children. We need to make sure that they understand that we are their safe place, if that's the only safe place that they have. When I was a kid, my parents used to tell us, and all through adulthood, there's nothing that you can do that's going to make me unlove you. And it really lines up with the phrase, I love you and there's nothing that you can do about it. I tell my students all the time that I love them. Some of them believe me from the very first time I say it. Some of them don't. But eventually I'll get the I love you too. And they know, that tells me that they trust me. They know that I'm there to do my very best day in and day out. So I know, we have to love them through it. We have to be that safe place for them. And I can't do it by myself. I need everyone else to participate with me.
Well, I'd end with remember and know your why while you're there. And remind yourself that over and over. Every time something happens, just remind yourself of your why you're doing it, while you're there. And take a deep breath, because it clears your brain. Deep breath, breathe out before you say or do anything that you might regret or might injure a student or another teacher. Take a deep breath. Just remember your why.
Thank you so much to our panelists. I may have told a little lie. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'm sure they'll all hang out and answer questions. But I'm going to toss it back over to Dr. Kelly. Do one question?
She has her
I have to
hand up.
choose the question asker?
I got one over here.
We have like 5 questions, so.
Oh,
You want to say through your question? Okay. I'll be quick. In the middle, beautiful. Moved me to tears. I had to move over to this side. Thank you for sharing that story. I grew up in an affluent family, but no one knew that we were getting hit at home, except for a teacher and for an after-school counselor. And so you listed all these resources, and do you see OST workers as being like coordinated with teachers, or like how do they fit into the full with caring for our students?
So how can out of school time employees and programs fit into this process of positive school discipline, but also creating safe spaces for students?
I know many districts are looking for community partners because now that's part of what law is requiring school districts to do, to engage. And it looks good for businesses, and it looks good for the to say that the community is supporting us, the community is behind us. So from whether I'm in the classroom or whether I'm making policy, whether I'm doing whatever, we want community involvement. Hosting events on campus is one way I know you can get involved. But the buildings that are near you, talking to those building leaders and saying, what do you need? Money is always huge. When you see teachers are always trying to fund something for their classroom. This is the first, well, school starts for my classroom August 1st. Most of the teachers up here, we all get kids August 1st. I'm getting ready to leave here and go back to my room and work.
Same here.
Just to be ready for next Thursday. I'm gonna, because I don't want to, but in the meantime, so anyway, looking for teachers, donors choose. I was saying all that to say, because teachers are out spending their money right now for their classrooms. Teachers fund their own rooms. I don't know if you've seen the memes on social media that say government funded room, teacher funded room, and you got them side by side, the two. They don't, all the beautiful posters and all the color and the culture. When I travel, I'm always, people are like, what? I'm buying it for my kids. And yes, you can write off whatever on your, it's the amount that you write off on your taxes, that didn't even cover my Scholastic magazine subscription.
$250.
But I subscribe because I want my kids to have articles. I want my kids to be exposed where they can't go. I spend my money to give them experiences. So even if you find a teacher that you, so I'm getting ready to ask teachers to ask people in the community to be speakers in my classroom. So even if they Teams you in or Zoom you in and share your life experience with that student so that you talk about your career, your participate in the career fairs that they have. Schools we're now beginning to say, okay, we're letting adults in that passed background checks, that have gone through all the process. So there's ways to get into schools. In the first panel, we were talking about, at one point, for various reasons, schools kind of shutting down, locking down for safety, for all of these things. But if you are going, they want you to come in, help kids read. They want you to come in and be still room moms, and we still need all of those. I grew up with a room mom. I remember we had cool room moms. They would come, if we were doing something exciting, they would bring extra things to help the teacher. So all of those experiences can come back into the classroom now that we're in the school. I think being a part of your parent-teacher association, I think most buildings still do have something like that, right? The parent organization, and then getting involved. That's one way in your local school and being involved. as a parent in that way.
Lots of good ideas there. Question
Sorry,
there.
got long-winded.
Yep, sorry, white dress.
This is my question. It goes to Bryan, right? So we've had this research for a long time. And helps us know that our students are still self-regulated. So basic vegetable and food that they never learn. Same science that helps us know how our educators show up. Why? Our research, I love it so much. There's so much hope. We bring it out to the world, and we still get, we don't have time. What do you all think causes it? It's research. I mean, this is how we're made as human beings. Why is it not reaching all level of education, community, parents? What is your opinion?
So why isn't research cultivating the level of buy-in that we need from the community? Yep.
If I could address that. I think with this, specifically with the positive school discipline, I think the teachers are motivated, the school staff is motivated to do it, and I think that's where the chain of command loses it. It's different when decisions are made up above. They have the power to make it go downhill. We don't have the power to make it go uphill. And as long as we are doing it with fidelity, I know the school that I'm at started this before I got there. I'm going into my 5th year at the school site. So they had started the training, and there's a group of people who have had the initial training, but it never really progressed completely. And there's been such a huge turnover that now it's, less than maybe half the staff that have been trained. So one of the goals that we had as our positive culture committee is to, it's like get a team to go do the training, which we did, and now we need to bring it back to school. We have to teach the kids how to do these things. We need to make sure that we're doing SEL, social emotional learning, community circles every day. We do flower breathing in my class. Somebody starts to have a bad day, we're going to take a break, flower breathe, reset, go to the calming corner. And it starts from the time that they're in pre-K. And they have to have that consistency. It needs to show up in every class. There's some students who can't handle being in the gym for PE. There's some kids that can't handle being in the art room for art. And they need to be able to learn how to manage that. So it's not just what happens in my classroom, it's what's in my neighbor's classroom, and it's what's in the grade level above me. And what the foundations that I'm setting in 3rd grade are going to carry them into 4th grade. And if that 4th grader has something maybe a little bit different, then they can, add that to their little toolkit of how I can keep myself in check. But if it's not going to be followed through, at least at the school side, that it's just not going to progress. And no matter how much information we have, no matter how much research there is, if it's not going to start at the top, it's not going to come down to us. We have to be the ones to put it in action. And then if enough people are doing it and we start yelling loud enough, maybe they'll hear us. But we just need to keep on doing what we're doing, because we know if that's in the best interest of our students, then and it's in the best interest of us, then that's all that, we can do. We just have to keep fighting the good fight.
I think some of that too is speak. Because accountability and speak. We are so enmeshed. And everybody is interrelated to somebody. Somebody don't understand. And it's the head. Everything falls in leadership. I'm watching how many in corporate America, in education, and all of it. Your people are afraid to hold people accountable. And especially in the school system. I see this all the time. I'm saying to myself, you're a principal. Tell that girl what to do. I don't get it. It's accountability. And it's people. If I make Susie do this, then Susie is related to John. And John is the head of the so-and-so. I don't care about John. This kid is here to learn. And these people, I like what you said. Everyone, I think you're going to a building, everybody needs to be doing the same thing, but at a different level. We still struggling with differentiating instruction. We're still doing whole group. But the research shows us what we need to do. It works. But we got to have leaders who are not afraid to do it. It's fear and accountability. And it will get people to get over themselves. I could care less about y'all. It's all about another job.
Right.
And so I'm going to say what I need to say. And then we'll see what happens.
Right, and when we can get that self-regulation and control, when we can get the behavior under control, then we can get the academics under control. And then we can work on the other things that are out of control. And, you know, it's just going to get better. It's that ripple effect. But we have to start first getting these kids we have to get them in school, and we have to get them learning how to deal with themselves.
And I know there are so many questions and this is a great discussion, but we are so over time. And I'm going to be the person that calls it because I'm getting a little warm up here. So thank you again to our wonderful panelists. And if you have a question for them, find them afterwards and talk with them. So thank you.
Can we get a group picture before we go?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to our panelists. The second panel, absolutely just really appreciative of you sharing your stories and really giving us insight on what we can do as community members. So if we can give them a round of applause. And Katie, thank you for keeping everything together. And so this event, this series would not be made possible without a generous support from the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative, which is very much what's helped us to be able to provide PSDI for the community. So we want to pay acknowledgement to that. First of all, thank you. And so quickly, some call to action for you. We shared on this wall insight from our youth voices from our last event. Please, on your way out, make sure you take time to hear what they are saying about how we can support this type of positive environment for our youth. We also want to take some insight into what was shared with us. So asking why, getting connected with youth, and even just giving people an opportunity to share their feelings. So the more we can make space available, eliminating that fear, the better that we can make successful environments for our youth. And then lastly, I would not be executive director if I did not tell you, follow us on social media. Share your experience today. If you're on Instagram, share what you saw, tag us, make sure that you talk about how this can be of benefit to the environment. Tell someone about our upcoming events, September 7th, our education conference, our Future Educators Conference on October 11th, and our Top Golf fundraiser on September 17th. So get your friends together. This is a way that you can support what we're doing in the community. Yes, and Sandy in the back, wave your hand. Sandy is our program associate helping us make this possible. Thank you so much. So make sure you complete your survey before you leave and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.